A lady in a purple dress asks when the Grand Duke is expected to arrive, and another answers that he's running late due to a fire at the Central Street Theater. A man asks about His Highness the Prince, and they tell him he's waiting in the guest room. Then, everyone gets ordered to move out and make sure there's nothing that can be used against them. A man is addressed as Your Excellency, and told they've just arrived at the prince's detached palace. The arrival of Grand Duke Basilenti is announced. The lady in the purple dress greets the Grand Duke and introduces herself as the sixth prince's nanny. The nanny tells him refreshments are set up in the garden and asks him to wait a moment. The Grand Duke, revealed to be named Ferric Basilenti, refuses to wait, declaring he's taking the prince with him right now. He asks where Prince Zion is, so the nanny tells him he's in the guest room and offers to lead him there. On their way, the nanny apologizes for the prince not coming out to greet him, explaining that his health has been fragile since birth. She adds that he was just bedridden with a cold a few days ago. Once they reach the room, she announces their entry. Inside, a little blonde boy, introduced as the sixth prince, Zion Harta, welcomes the Grand Duke. The Duke's assistant looks surprised and almost says something about the boy's appearance. Out of nowhere, the Grand Duke draws his sword and points it right at Zion, shocking everyone. The Duke angrily asks if she's lost her mind, accusing her of trying to make a fool out of him. She protests, asking why he thinks she's tricking him, insisting the imperial family delivered the prince just as promised, honoring the treaty that demanded a royal hostage. The Duke reminds her of the border war between Basilenti and the imperial family, and the conditions set to end the war, handing over one of the purple-eyed princes. Specifically, Prince Zion Harta was supposed to be the hostage, and he should be around 8 years old by now. The Grand Duke angrily points out that the boy in front of them is clearly not 8, and that they are looking down on the house of Basilenti. The boy, Zion, insists he's not a toddler and swears he really is 8 years old, claiming his growth is just stunted, and he'll eventually catch up since both his parents are tall. The nanny desperately begs, His Highness. The Duke smirks, catching the boy's slip of the tongue about his parents' height. He remembers that Her Majesty the Empress is famous in high society for being unusually short. He figures that while purple eyes are undeniable proof of imperial blood, the boy's comment suggests they might have just grabbed a random illegitimate kid of the same age. The Grand Duke states that the problem isn't just the kid's height, and demands the nanny explain the faded spots on the hallway walls. She plays dumb and claims the paintings were taken down for reframing to keep the villa looking good. The Duke counters that he figured they took them down to hide a specific painting, probably one of the real Prince Zion Harta. The nanny is visibly shaken, and the Duke adds they must have thought removing the portraits would be enough since the boy grew up in total isolation. The Duke then reveals he's already met the real prince in secret, declaring that their truce is officially broken. He announces that the price for trying to pass off a fake prince is death and gets ready to strike. The nanny screams that they haven't broken any promises, which catches the Duke off guard. She urges them to look for themselves, pointing out that the treaty only demanded a prince with purple eyes, and this kid clearly has them. The Grand Duke stares silently into the boy's purple eyes. The assistant angrily snaps at the nanny for her nonsense, stressing that their agreement explicitly called for Prince Zion Harta himself, warning her not to test his patience with weak excuses. The Grand Duke orders his assistant to stand down and announces they're leaving, telling him to get the carriage ready. The assistant objects, asking for a chance to track down the real prince. The Duke tells him the boy is just a royal bastard, but even so, imperial blood runs through his veins, as proven by his purple eyes. The assistant voices his concern about sacrificing someone so young, but the Duke coldly remarks that death doesn't care about age. The assistant accepts the Duke's logic, so the Duke orders him to stop wasting time and get ready to head back to the Grand Duchy. After they leave, the nanny praises the boy for his perfect performance and tells him to keep acting like that once he reaches the Grand Duchy. She reminds him never to forget who he is, no matter how hard they interrogate him, and the boy promises he won't let her down. Then she asks for his name. The boy answers that his name is Zion Harta. The nanny confirms it, telling him never to forget that name, while the boy reassures himself that he is now Zion Harta. He reflects on his new identity as the Harta Empire's sixth prince, a political pawn sent to keep the ceasefire between the imperial family and House Basilenti. He figures that this means he's going to die pretty soon. A flashback of a massive fire begins, where a voice points to a huge pillar and screams that it's burning. Silk curtains and a silver cup gifted by the Empress are shown burning as well. Everything turns to ash, even the speaker, who then asks Zion why he isn't burning. A charred figure asks Zion why he's the only one untouched by the flames. Zion wakes up from the nightmare to the sound of someone calling him. He finds himself in a carriage and is told they just crossed into the Grand Duchy. He realizes he's in a carriage heading straight to the Grand Duke's castle. A maid hands him a cup to drink. He drinks it and finds it super bitter. only to be told it's coffee. She tells him he's been out for a while, so he thanks her while secretly thinking about them giving him something this bitter on an empty stomach. The carriage suddenly halts, and Zion asks if they've arrived. A man outside informs the maid that the Grand Duke requested a brief meeting with the prince before they reach the palace. The maid says she'll go with him, but the man clarifies that the Duke asked to speak with the prince completely alone. The man states that only His Highness can step out. Zion realizes the true meaning of alone as he follows the Grand Duke up a set of stairs on a high wall, wishing the Duke would slow down a bit. A flashback shows the Duke ordering everyone, including the maid from the carriage, to stay back, and Zion notes he thought at least his nanny would be allowed to come. The Grand Duke warns him against trying anything stupid like running away, because his men would catch him instantly. Zion replies that he won't run away. He tells the Duke that he doesn't mean to overstep, but he already knows about the secret deal between the Crown and House Basilenti. He knows the imperial family has no intention of protecting the hostage prince, and that he came here knowing full well he was sent to die. He tells the Grand Duke that he has nowhere else to go anyway, so there's no need to worry about him trying to escape. Zion wonders if the Grand Duke is even listening and understanding his words, feeling nervous under his gaze and amazed by this sheer intimidation. The Duke says that since Zion already knows, it saves him a long explanation and tells him to look straight ahead. Zion looks out to see a vast, desolate wasteland. The Duke explains it wasn't always a wasteland. Ancient records say a great river used to flow there, with endless fertile fields. That was 3 centuries ago, before the first emperor of Harda cast a curse on this land. The Grand Duke points to iron stakes driven into the ground. He explains that the stakes mark how much the plague spreads each year, having started in the heart of the Grand Duchy centuries ago and now reaching the imperial borders. Zion asks if this is revenge, but the Duke denies it, since the first emperor died 300 years ago. He mentions that if he wanted revenge, he wouldn't demand an innocent child. It's not about an old grudge, but rather that his people need fertile land for the Grand Duchy to survive. Simply put, Zion is the sacrifice needed to break this curse. Any member of the Harda imperial family would do, and it just happened to be him, so Zion understands that this is the cold reality. The Duke says that despite this, Zion's life is still his own, and taking it isn't a fair trade, so he owes him one last wish, making Zion wonder about this noble side of a man rumored to be a monster. Zion thinks about the rumors calling the Grand Duke a bloodthirsty beast, and wonders if beasts usually speak with such dignity. He thinks to himself that a last wish won't matter once he's dead, since his fate was sealed the moment he arrived. The Duke states that he can't spare his life, but other than that, he's truly sorry. The Duke seems taken aback by Zion's words. To you, Your Excellency, and to everyone in the Grand Duchy, Zion thinks, if only his death could truly save everyone. In the evening at the palace, while boxes are being unpacked, Zion directs them on where to put his clothes chest. A dark-haired woman introduces herself as Hilda, the palace's head maid, and welcomes him. Hilda leads him to his room, explaining that his quarters are in the annex, since the main castle is exclusively for the direct lineage of House Basilenti. She tells him the chimney in his room is sealed, but that's fine since spring is just around the corner. She adds that their summers are burning hot and winters are freezing cold, as rain and snow are rare. Zion says he understands, wondering how he ended up alone with yet another stranger, as a flashback shows Hilda being ordered by another maid to finish sweeping the main hall. Hilda points to a nearby forest and tells Zion it's Astrid Forest. She explains it's the only green spot in this entire land, created by the Grand Duchess 5 years ago, which is why it bears her name. Hilda tells the prince that the Grand Duke wasn't always the cold man he is now. In his youth, he was famous for his fiery passion and temper. She adds that he went as far as kidnapping the Duchess to marry her the next day, despite her mentor's absolute opposition to the marriage, surprising the prince, who thinks this doesn't sound like his personality at all. She reveals the truth is that the Grand Duke has recently started losing his mind. She explains that his wife was an exceptional sorceress who managed to make an entire forest bloom in a single instant right in the middle of this wasteland, but she exhausted herself trying to restore it with her magic, completely draining her mana and falling into a deep coma inside the Western Tower for the past 5 years. She confirms the Duke hasn't been the same since, and wishes she could sugarcoat the truth for the young prince, but there's no other way to describe his condition. He wonders to himself why this woman is telling him all these secrets. He gets a bad feeling, wondering if she expects something from a hostage about to be sacrificed, and feels anxious about his nanny's absence. She reassures him not to worry about her since the main hall is massive, and reveals she just needed an excuse to speak with him in private. She directly asks him if he wants to live. He's shocked and asks what she means. She offers to help him escape, explaining that while she might not be as talented as the Duchess, she's still a capable mage with enough power to smuggle him out. He asks her about her loyalty to the Grand Duke and what will happen to the curse if the sacrifice escapes. She replies that since he already knows about it, she can speak openly, insisting that sacrificing his life won't break it and he'll die for nothing, then declares her loyalty is to the Grand Duchess, not him. She adds that the lady she serves would never sacrifice an innocent child to save this land. He hesitates, saying that unfortunately, the Grand Duke doesn't see things that way. She tells him what matters now is what he wants, promising to get him out of the duchy alive if he agrees, and then asks if he isn't afraid of death. She notices his hesitation and asks why, noting that he seems like he's already given up. She urges him to think it over carefully before someone arrives. His nanny arrives, interrupting their conversation. She asks him what Hilda was whispering about, and he lies, saying she was just telling him about the forest. She notices his pale face, so he claims he's still tired from the long carriage ride and is going to rest, suggesting she should rest too. In his room, he reflects on his conversation with her. She didn't seem like a bad person, but her offer to help him escape keeps echoing in his mind. He wonders why he's hesitating, and the reason is that he has already accepted his death. He reveals his true self. He isn't Prince Harda, the political pawn. That was just a role he was contracted to play. In reality, she's a professional actress, 10 years old, not 8, a girl disguised as a boy. No imperial blood runs through her veins. She's just a commoner girl who inherited these rare purple eyes, and the youngest member of the Borba theater troupe. On top of all that, she's a convicted arsonist, a murderer, and a death row prisoner waiting for execution. Her real name is Letitia Borba. Before she got that name, she had nothing, just a nameless street orphan starving in the alleys. She remembers bumping into passers-by on the street. She recalls how a man accused her of stealing his bread, calling her a filthy thief, and how she ran away from him. She was running even though her legs were about to collapse because she hadn't eaten in 2 days, knowing she had to keep running. She knew that if he caught her, he'd take the bread back and beat her to death. And as she rounded a corner, she crashed into someone else. She knocked him down and realized the man she bumped into was a wealthy noble. The baker caught up to her and was about to punish her. The noble stepped in and offered to pay for the food, asking him to leave the child to him. He gave him a silver coin, and the baker rejoiced and left her, telling him to teach the thief a lesson. He walked away happy with the money he received. Fear gripped Letitia, wondering what he would do to her. Noticing his luxurious clothes and how lavishly he spent money, she realized he must be an influential noble, remembering a friend of hers who was whipped until his back tore open just for bumping into a cruel noble. She feared she would get whipped too. He told her she had wonderful potential and called her little one. He asked if she wanted to go with him, and from that moment on, her entire world changed. That man was Mr. Borba, leader of one of the most famous theater troupes. As an ignorant street orphan, she didn't know that his troupe, located on Central Street, was the talk of the capital, drawing massive crowds every night. He gave her warm meals, clean clothes, and invited her to become an actress. At first, she was extremely shy, and memorizing scripts and performing in front of strangers terrified her. But she poured her heart and soul into her work, successfully nailing her roles on stage. The audience reacted positively to her performances. She played an angel descending from above, a role that became a huge hit. She truly believed he had recognized her talent with his sharp artistic eye. But it turned out the potential he praised was just her pretty face, which shocked her. Despite that, she was so happy that she felt all her suffering was worth it. She felt like she was living in a beautiful dream, wondering if that was why it suddenly ended. News spread in the papers about a devastating fire that wiped out the entire troupe, including its leader, calling her a demon with a child's face. Headlines claimed she burned her savior alive, and people wondered what kind of monster could commit such a heinous act. The public called her a witch and evil, saying a demon had possessed her. They demanded she be burned at the stake while she was under arrest. She became known as the Witch of Borba, and it was said she didn't eat or speak a single word during interrogation, making people believe she had accepted her execution. An influential figure decided that since she was going to die anyway, why not make use of her first? He offered her a new role, promising that if she played her part perfectly, she would be rewarded with a chance to, but the promise was left unfinished. Back in the present, she thinks that once she accepts a role, the world becomes her stage, and she's a professional actress. She believes a true actor never leaves the stage before the final curtain falls. She resolves to give this performance everything she's got until the very end. 3 days have passed since her arrival at the Duchy's castle, and right now she is absolutely starving. She explains that even though she's treated as a guest of honor and her crew is provided with tons of supplies, the duchy's land is barren. Near its heart, the land is completely dead, making fresh vegetables more precious than livestock, which is why they had to ration them. She remembers her nanny's instructions that the sixth prince is exactly 8 years old, so her appearance must match a normal boy his age. She also told her the Duke would visit in less than a week, so they had to strictly control her meals, which basically meant starving. She thinks about how surviving for days on barely any food shrunk her body enough to pass as a younger child, narrowly saving her from exposure and execution. The hunger combined with the bitter coffee completely wrecked her stomach, causing severe pain. To make matters worse, the castle only sent raw ingredients, and her tiny crew of a nanny, a maid, and 3 drivers had to cook everything themselves, none of them knowing she was a substitute except her. Since she was supposed to be royalty, the entire cooking duty fell on a teenage maid named Aina. Unfortunately, she was a terrible cook and didn't know Letitia was fasting, resulting in a disastrous meal that made her feel violently sick. She apologized profusely, so Letitia reassured her, though she felt bad for her. As a result, she lived the last 3 days on a few spoonfuls of watery porridge and salt water, so hungry her stomach wouldn't let her sleep. Her next meal wouldn't be until the afternoon, and she felt she couldn't hold out that long. Then she spotted some acacia flowers. She realized these flowers were edible, and she could pick the petals to sip the sweet nectar. She thought it might not be much, but it could stop her stomach from growling, so she started eating them. Happiness washed over her from the sweet taste. The sweetness was unbelievable, and she wondered when was the last time she ate real food. A cold voice from behind interrupted her, asking if she was eating grass. Startled, she turned to see a boy holding a lantern, who mockingly asked if this was how the imperial family raised their heirs, like street animals. The boy had the same silver hair color as Ferric Basilenti and a young face. He was wearing fancy clothes and roaming freely around the annex grounds at this late hour. It was Chamuka Basilenti, the eldest son and heir of House Basilenti, and he was accompanied by a white wolf-like dog. She cursed her bad luck for running into him. She wondered why there was a dog with him, since Hilda never mentioned any pets in the palace. She politely greeted him as the young master of the duchy, but he coldly shot back, telling her not to act polite with him, calling her heart a scum. Chamuka offers Letitia a piece of jerky, saying that if she's that hungry, he can share his dog's food. He mockingly adds that humans aren't supposed to eat it, but looking at her, he can barely tell her apart from a stray dog, so her stomach should handle it. He orders her to get down on all fours and crawl to him for the food. She wonders to herself if this kid is trying to provoke her on purpose. She thinks that the hostility between the imperial family and House Basilenti goes back generations, so she didn't expect a warm welcome. But asking a prince to get on all fours, she realizes he's trying to humiliate her or make her lose her temper, and knows the easiest way to end this situation quickly is to just play along. She wonders why she should even care about royal dignity. She thinks about how everyone here is cornering her just because she's living on borrowed time, all talking without knowing who she really is. She decides it's time to turn the tables. He might think she's a spoiled prince, but she grew up digging through trash to survive. Crawling in the dirt means nothing to her, so she gets on all fours and barks. He's shocked by her action and calls her crazy. She barks again, thinking to herself that a real dog wouldn't speak. He calls her a lunatic and wonders if the Harda bloodline has any dignity, screaming in her face, "Have you no shame?" She approaches him, snatches the meat from his hand, and starts eating it, amazed by how delicious it tastes. He screams at her, face red with anger and embarrassment, calling her a freak. She ignores him and keeps eating, then snatches another piece. He screams and runs away in a panic with his dog. She sighs with relief, having accomplished her mission and gotten the meat, deciding to eat it slowly so she doesn't throw up. Elsewhere, a man scolds Chamuka for being out so late. He asks where he was wandering, and he hesitantly replies that he was in Astrid Forest. The man gets angry, asking why he entered it and why he keeps taking Tan the dog out of the tower. He asks about his strange behavior lately, warning him that the Grand Duke will punish him severely if he finds out. He replies coldly, telling him to inform his father if he likes, mockingly asking if he really thinks locking him up next to his sleeping mother will make him a worthy heir. Grand Duke Ferric appears and calls his son by name. He asks if he entered the forest without permission, and he denies it, claiming he stayed near the edge because he heard new guests had moved into the villa there. He tells him they are imperial hostages and that he should request food supplies instead. He tells him that the land's curse is coming to an end, and Duchess Astrid will wake up soon, ordering him to stop taking his little brother out of the tower until then. Chamuka wonders about the little brother, saying he doesn't have a brother. His father confronts him, asking if he really believes that. He asks his father if he really thinks sacrificing one sick prince will solve everything, telling him to stop pretending not to see the truth. He says his mother's time is running out. that rain will never fall on this wasteland again, and that clearly his father doesn't even care about her anymore. Ferric orders him to take Tan and leave. He leaves with the dog, which licks the boy's hand before going. About 12 hours later, at lunchtime, Letitia feels the atmosphere is completely suffocating as she sits at the dining table. She wonders how long they've been sitting there in silence. 10 minutes? 20? And why neither of them has said a single word. Even if she ignores the awkwardness and focuses on eating, she wonders if they're trying to fatten her up before sacrificing her. Every dish on the table was meat. Meat pie, grilled lamb chops, roasted duck, a thick steak, and meat soup. She feels like she's going to throw up if she takes another bite. The Grand Duke asks her if she's lost her appetite, and she falsely replies that her stomach isn't feeling well. She adds that the rough carriage ride must have upset her stomach. He says he shouldn't have asked her to join him today, and she replies it's not his fault at all and that she appreciates the wonderful meal. He tells her that if she's not well, she should return to her room and rest, making her wonder if he's genuinely worried about her. When he acts this way, he seems surprisingly kind, just like when he took her to the ramparts and offered to grant her one last wish. She thanks him for his kindness and excuses herself to return to her room. Just as she's about to leave, an elderly voice calls out to her, revealing himself to be Chamuka's grandfather, Gayan Basalenti, the former Grand Duke. He declares that the offering has finally arrived. Ferric and Chamuka try to stop him, but it's too late. She suddenly finds herself suspended in midair. Chamuka threatens to tell his grandmother what his grandfather is doing. Gayan ignores him and heads outside, carrying her with him. They find themselves in a wasteland, and she realizes this is how she's going to die. She notices from the Grand Duke's expression that sacrificing her right here wasn't part of his plan. She concludes that the old man is the former head of the family since his grandson called him granddad. She thinks that if he insists, House Basalenti will have no choice but to accept it, and her only role is to play the royal scapegoat. She never expected to die so suddenly without any proper ritual, but the outcome is the same as he grabs her. He tells her that before proceeding, he needs to make sure she's the true offering. She wonders what true offering means. He explains that offering a fake sacrifice won't achieve anything. He shows her a withered leaf, explaining it was picked from Astrid Forest and started to wither the moment it left the lake. He tells her that if she really is the chosen sacrifice, she should be able to cleanse the curse from this single leaf. She panics, since no one told her there would be a test, realizing they'll discover she's a fake. He urges her to show her power and bring them back the miracle she was destined to bring to this land. She thinks to herself that she'll die here whether she's the real prince or not. If she's exposed as an imposter, she'll be executed for deceiving the Grand Duchy anyway. But she wonders what will happen to her agreement if her true identity is revealed. She remembers the promise made to her. If she played her role perfectly, she would be given a new role. In return, her family's lives would be spared. She remembers scenes from the fire, the screams of her troop members, and finding survivors. She was told most of them died, but they found a handful of survivors suffering from severe burns who wouldn't last the night without immediate treatment. The man offered that his royal healers would treat them immediately if she accepted his offer. She remembers confronting him and calling him a monster, knowing he knew the truth. She accuses him of knowing she would never burn her family alive. She says that if she were truly a heartless witch who killed the people who raised her, why would he think using them as hostages would make her obey? She realizes blaming her was the easiest solution, and they just needed a scapegoat to bury the truth, and she just happened to have the purple eyes they needed. Despite everything, she remembers the happy moments with her theater troupe. She recalls accepting the offer, saying she would play the role of the prince, as it was the only option available to her. Her only hope was that saving their lives would be in exchange for hers, and that was the sole reason she came here. She couldn't allow herself to die as an imposter and cost them their lives too. She touches the withered leaf, and it suddenly glows with light and comes back to life. Gayan laughs, announcing that his son has indeed brought them the perfect sacrifice. She wonders in bewilderment how that happened. He declares there's no reason to wait any longer, that her noble sacrifice will be remembered forever, and gets ready to kill her. The sword moves toward her, but it gets deflected at the last second. Ferric appears, having stopped his father's attack, and tells him to step back, saying blind slaughter won't solve anything. Gayan comments on his son's sharp reflexes, and he replies, wondering who he inherited his blood from. The old man declares his patience has run out. Ferric asks him what if this ritual fails, explaining that every second they waste brings them closer to ruin, and the lake is drying up right before their eyes. He tells his father they are looking for an underground spring and need more mana to ensure its success, and if they rush now, they'll doom everyone. Gayan wonders what if this scrawny prince escapes while they're wasting time. Letitia wonders how it worked, why the leaf reacted to her, and how that was even possible. She sarcastically wonders if she's actually the emperor's illegitimate daughter, but immediately brushes it off, thinking the idea is totally ridiculous and absurd. Right then, she hears a gentle female voice in her head telling her she's trembling, calling her a poor little thing. The voice reassures her there's nothing to fear and tells her to leave everything to it. Meanwhile, Ferric tells his father, Gayan, they need to proceed with caution since they only have one shot at this. He adds that if anything goes wrong, Astrid will die, but Gayan coldly replies, why should I care? Gayan asks if one woman's life can really be weighed against the tens of thousands living in the Grand Duchy. Ferric declares he doesn't care if Astrid dies, as long as the forest she created survives. Suddenly, Letitia speaks in a different voice, a woman's voice, telling Ferric to go ahead and kill her then. Everyone is stunned, feeling a sudden icy chill in the air. The woman demands a divorce, calling Ferric a worthless man, which completely shocks him. Ferric suddenly catches Letitia before she hits the ground, dropping to his knees in total shock. Gayan snaps out of it, wondering what just happened. He finds Letitia unconscious in his arms. She wakes up in an unfamiliar room, realizing it's the backstage dressing room of her theater troupe. She wonders how she got here since she was standing by the lake just a second ago, thinking she might be in a lucid dream. A woman's voice calls out from behind a curtain, calling her, my dear. The woman steps out. It's Astrid Basilenti, the former Grand Duchess of House Basilenti. Astrid hugs Letitia warmly, gushing over how beautiful she is. She says she's just as pretty as her own daughter, and if she weren't stuck like this, she would have made her disciple on the spot. Astrid notices the place looks like a dressing room and figures out Letitia is a professional actress at such a young age, expressing her admiration. Then adds she never expected the crown to actually send the real prince anyway. Letitia addresses her as, Your Grace. But Astrid praises her cleverness and reveals she just decided to go through with her divorce, so she's no longer Your Grace. She tells her to just call her Astrid, leaving Letitia completely mesmerized by her otherworldly beauty. Letitia asks if she's dreaming, and Astrid answers that she's close to the truth. They're inside her subconscious, and she's only here for a quick visit. Letitia asks if she was the one who brought the withered leaf back to life, but she denies it, stressing that power was entirely Letitia's own. Letitia wonders in shock if she really is a descendant of the forgotten Harda imperial family, but Astrid flatly denies it. She tells her that what lies inside her is something way greater, and being a Harda descendant means nothing compared to it. Astrid asks if she knows that the first emperor's curse is what destroyed this land, and Letitia confirms the Grand Duke already explained the history to her. Astrid reveals a crucial detail that even Ferric doesn't know. Although the first emperor cast the curse, his bloodline alone isn't enough to break it anymore. Letitia wonders why, while Astrid notes that both the current and former dukes were convinced a royal sacrifice would lift the curse. Astrid clarifies she never said the sacrifice had to be a Harda. She only said it needed purple eyes. And Ferric jumped to conclusions on his own, pointing out that the royal family's eyes are actually lavender, not true purple. Letitia realizes Astrid is the reason she was brought here, and Astrid deeply apologizes for dragging her into this mess. Astrid admits she never imagined Ferric would actually succeed in finding her, since she set a condition she thought was impossible. Even now, she can't believe he found someone like her. Letitia notices the look in Astrid's eyes. She takes her hand and tells her she's a mage, just like her. Letitia wonders if she's a mage, and Astrid confirms it, explaining that her mana core hasn't awakened yet, but she can feel mana overflowing inside her, like her magic almost woke up but stopped just short of completion. She explains that most mages awaken naturally over time, but a strong clash with an opposing element can force an awakening, and since she has a water affinity, just like her, she suggests throwing herself into a blazing fire, assuring her that a directly opposing magical element won't kill her. She advises her to head straight to the magic tower the moment she gets a chance, telling her that her old master is incredibly capable and will recognize her talent and take her under his wing. Letitia asks what will happen to the Grand Duchy if she goes to the magic tower. She asks if the mages will be able to save this land. Astrid answers that the magic tower always demands a hefty price to accept a new apprentice. She had to pay 12 vaults full of gold and create a river in the middle of a desert. She expects Letitia's price to be even higher, but adds that if House Basilenti hires them, the tower would happily create a lake or make it rain. But even then, that won't wipe out the curse itself. Astrid tells Letitia this isn't her burden to bear, that the Grand Duchy needs to solve this on its own, and reminds her that when she touched the leaf, the curse vanished instantly, and it came back to life. Letitia deduces from this that this land doesn't actually need imperial blood. It needs her life. Astrid denies it, saying she's wrong. Letitia remembers how actors are taught to suppress involuntary physical reactions that might give away their lies, like a slight change in breathing, rapid blinking, or unconsciously licking dry lips. She notices these signs in Astrid and concludes she's lying, meaning sacrificing her really would save everyone. Letitia wakes up thinking that Astrid said something at the very end. She remembers her faint voice fading out, asking her to remember something, but she couldn't hear it clearly. She fully wakes up to find Ferric right there, close to her face. She calls him by his title and asks where she is. Realizing she's not in her bedroom and that every single window is covered by thick curtains, she reaches out to pull the curtain open since everything is pitch black. Chamuka's voice suddenly chimes in, warning her not to touch those curtains unless she wants his father to execute her on the spot. He orders her to stay close and follow him. She trips and falls to the ground, apologizing. Chamuka wonders why his father brought her to the tower. He throws a blanket over Letitia, saying she shouldn't see what's inside. Then he tells her to climb onto his back. He carries her down the stairs, telling her to keep her eyes closed. She thanks him for getting her out of there. He asks her to just call him by his name, Chamuka, instead of Sir. Letitia is surprised, wondering if he hated her, since letting someone use your first name usually means you're close. She wonders about this sudden change of heart, and if there was a reason he was picking on her earlier. He tells her to listen up and asks if she knows his father is planning to execute her. She says yes, so he asks if he told her when, and she replies no, explaining that the Grand Duke and the former Duke don't seem to agree, so nothing has been decided yet. Chamuka points out that she talks about her death like it's happening to someone else, and she replies that she accepted her fate a long time ago, and the less she fights it, the easier it is on the kids, meaning Chamuka too. He asks if she really believes spilling her blood will break the curse, making her confused. He tells her Hilda already confirmed that killing a Harder Royal won't fix anything, and she knows way more about magic and curses than his dad does. She thinks to herself, but what if the Grand Duke is right? And honestly, what difference does it make if he isn't? She figures neither of them will suffer either way, so Chamuka asks if she's scared, since he just told her she's walking straight to her death. She asks if he expects her to beg for her life, and he says no, but he finds it weird. He says a panicked hostage trying to escape would definitely be a pain, but the way she's acting, it's almost like she wants to die, which he thinks is ridiculous. Elsewhere, the guards express concern about Letitia wandering around alone, but she reassures them she'll be fine and just wants some peace and quiet. Hilda worries that the former Grand Duke might find her again, but the nanny tells her His Highness already assured them it's safe. She adds that pushing the matter any further would be seen as insubordination. Hilda notices the nanny doesn't seem too worried about the prince, but the nanny fires back that she's deeply worried. Hilda points out that having a guard didn't stop what happened at the last banquet, wondering if this means the palace staff can't be trusted. Letitia steps in, telling Hilda to stop, thanking her for her concern but promising she'll be just fine. She smiles and tells her to stop worrying. In her room, she wonders if Lady Astrid is really ready to let the Basilenti land fall apart. She thinks that the guilt of sacrificing an innocent child might have become too heavy a burden for her, which is why she told her to flee to the magic tower. But she believes that deep down, she must still care about the family she left behind. She reflects on how the curse doesn't just poison the land, but every heir of the Basilenti bloodline eventually loses the ability to feel. She realizes it's a curse that affects their minds too. Letitia tells Chamuka he doesn't seem emotionless at all, and he answers that it's because the curse hasn't fully taken over him yet. He adds that it gets worse as you age until every trace of humanity vanishes. He states that his father and grandfather are already completely empty inside. Letitia tells him she gets what he's saying, but wonders why he's bringing this up all of a sudden. He replies that she shouldn't expect mercy. His father and grandfather genuinely believe her death will save this wasteland, and even if nothing changes, they won't feel a shred of guilt. He warns her not to expect them to mourn the meaningless death of a child. He tells her to start thinking unless she really wants to throw her life away for nothing. She thinks it's kind of him to warn her, but even after knowing all this, her role hasn't changed one bit. At first, she thought she was just another political sacrifice, but it turns out she's the key to restoring this dying land, which actually gives her death meaning. She realizes purple eyes were never proof of royal blood. They were just the sign of an unawakened mage, and what this land really needs is a mage's core. She remembers Lady Astrid told her exactly how to awaken her core, which means her next step is clear. Guyan Basilenti appears at her balcony, right where she expected him to visit. He laughs, wondering if she was waiting for him. She tells him that of course she was, since his last attempt was interrupted. She figured he'd come looking for her again. He's surprised that she expected him and still waited, telling her he doesn't know what she's planning. He says at least she's accepted her fate, and since she understands her situation, they can skip the formalities. So she tells him she has one request before they start. He agrees to hear it, so she asks him to set her on fire. He is completely shocked by her request. Elsewhere, Ferric asks his assistant what his father is up to, leaving the assistant bewildered. The servants gather outside in confusion, wondering what's going on. They see Guyan carrying the little prince on his shoulders, walking him all around the palace. Ferric sighs, wondering how many days his father will keep playing the doting grandfather. His assistant tells him today is the 4th day, and it's starting to become an issue. He adds that the prince's nanny is tearfully begging them to return him to her. The assistant remarks that it's better to shower him with affection than try to kill him, meaning he's postponed the prince's execution for now. Another maid tells the assistant that Guyan knows how to take care of kids, having raised both his son and grandson, adding that he's naturally good with them, so there's no need to worry. Ferric tells his assistant he clearly doesn't know his father, asking if he forgot the reason for his divorce. A flashback shows 5 years ago at the Basilenti estate, where maids are gossiping about how pale Lady Asana has looked lately. They reveal the Grand Duchess hasn't been seen in a while, saying she suffered severe complications during the birth of her second child. They add that the baby didn't survive either, which is why she vanished, and nobody knows where she is now. Isana Basilenti, the current Duke's mother and former Grand Duchess, loved the Grand Duchess like her own daughter. One day, while they were eating, she sighed. Her husband, Guyan, called her name, and after she replied, he told her he wanted another grandson, demanding she stop wasting time and find another woman to bear his child. She screamed at him, asking if he was completely heartless. She finally snapped, smashing a silver plate in his face, packed her bags that very day to return to her family, and sent the divorce papers the next morning. Guyan refused to sign the divorce papers. Ferric explains that he resisted with everything he had, so he locked him in the dungeon and forged his signature himself. He told his father that the moment he submitted those papers, he and his mother would legally be total strangers. Back in the present, Ferric asks his assistant if he still finds his father's actions reassuring, especially since he's now pampering a hostage prince for absolutely no logical reason after sending away the nanny and all the servants. Elsewhere, Letitia picks up a piece of jerky from the floor. Ferric and his assistant wonder what she's picking up and why there's dog jerky scattered all over the hallway. The assistant wonders if she has a new hobby of picking up trash from the floor. Guyan suddenly appears and scolds her, reminding her that he specifically told her to stop picking things up from the floor. He asks where she was, and she answers that she needed to check something in the archives, so he tells her they should go to the kitchen to fix her a proper snack. The assistant comments that the two are getting along much better than he expected. Later, Guyan gives Letitia a piece of chocolate, telling her she shouldn't eat things she finds on the ground. She claims she wasn't going to eat it, so he asks why she was picking it up then. She answers that she wanted to return it to whoever dropped it, or give it to Tan. He asks if she knows who dropped the meat, and she replies she figured out Chamuka left a trail so Tan could find his way to the tower. And since she was the one who brought Tan back at dawn, she doubts Chamuka even knows he's safe yet. Guyan pats her head, admitting her instincts are impressive. He double-checks with her because he thinks she might be an unawakened mage, and her brilliant idea is to throw herself into a fire. So she confirms Lady Astrid explicitly told her that in a dream. He mulls over Astrid's name, noting that the kid doesn't seem to be lying. He remembers sensing an unusual presence that day, definitely not that of a regular imperial prince. He decides that even if everything she said is true, he can't just throw her into a blazing fire, refusing to risk burning such an important sacrifice. She wonders if a sacrifice doesn't serve the same purpose, whether beaten to death or burned alive. He denies it, explaining that the ritual follows strict ancient traditions, and that he was only trying to knock her out that day, because to break the curse, the sacrifice must be drowned. She realizes that's why she was choked, and thinks that if fire isn't an option, he suggests another way to test her theory, asking her to hold out her hand. He places her hand on the dog Tan's head. He comments that Tan seems to really like her. She wonders if he just wants her to pet the dog, and he confirms it. She starts petting Tan, admiring his beautiful eyes. Suddenly, Guyan orders Tan to attack. Tan is introduced as the Grand Duke's blue-eyed wolfhound. Nobody treats him like a regular beast, and the staff always address him as Sir Tan. His noble, majestic appearance and rare breed definitely add to his reputation, but above all, his natural affinity for mana is what sets him apart. Tan is a magic-awakened dog, and though he can't cast spells, his sharp instincts let him detect hidden mana. He senses the mana radiating from Letitia. Mana is naturally drawn towards something more powerful, something much stronger than itself. Especially those who have awakened are instinctively drawn to those with a massive mana core. Tan already possesses an extraordinary amount of mana, meaning finding someone whose presence surpasses his is extremely rare. Guyan thinks to himself that Astrid herself, hailed as the greatest miracle of the century, exhausted herself and fell into an endless slumber. So if the boy's mana can't even surpass a dog's, he's worthless as a mage. But he wonders, what if the prince really carries that hidden spark, and how violently Tan would react to the boy's dormant mana? Tan lunges at Letitia, Ferric stops the attack at the very last second. He yells at his father, asking if he's completely lost his mind. He asks if he's really trying to kill the prince, using Tan to do it. Guyan comments that they were just about to find out the truth and that he's overreacting, claiming he was only testing Tan's obedience and had no intention of letting him cause real harm. Ferric fires back that if it weren't for his intervention, the boy would have been torn to shreds, and that his stepping in was absolutely necessary. His father accuses him of leaving the prince alone in a hallway with an attack dog, and Guyan replies he was watching the whole time, to which Ferric asks, "Watching what? His execution?" Guyan accuses him of failing to see the bigger picture and wonders by what right he's interfering in his business, while the assistant thinks about how bizarre this family is. Ferric declares the prince will be under his personal protection from now on, because leaving him with his father is basically a death sentence. Guyan scoffs at the idea that he'd allow that, so Ferric reminds him he's no longer the head of House Basilenti. He is. Ferric calls the guards. His father calls him an insolent bastard, so Ferric tells him this is a necessary measure to ensure their royal guests' safety. The former Grand Duke is taken down to the 7th underground cell. Hilda apologizes to Letitia, telling her that to guarantee her safety, the Grand Duke ordered new rooms to be prepared for her inside the main castle instead of the guest annex. She explains these rooms belonged to the first Grand Duke when he was a child, including a private bedroom, a dressing room, a large salon, a balcony, and even a personal study, making it way more comfortable than her previous quarters. Hilda apologizes again, saying she shouldn't have left her without guards, no matter what she said. The nanny tells Letitia that the Grand Duke will personally oversee her protection from now on, and she has nothing left to fear. Letitia asks Hilda what will happen to Lord Guyan now. She answers that he'll remain in the underground cell until the Grand Duke decides otherwise, noting that this is pretty common. Letitia inquires in surprise about it. Hilda explains that most of the time he gets released after about 10 days. Letitia thanks Hilda for telling her the truth, and Hilda considers it her duty to keep her informed. Later, the nanny serves Letitia some green tea. She thanks her and tells her to get some rest. The nanny asks if the Basilenti family is treating her well. Letitia answers that she assumes so, since they tightened her security and moved her into the first Grand Duke's old rooms. The nanny asks what she means, warning her not to be fooled by their empty gestures. She adds that she knows how easy it is to be dazzled by fine silk and lavish meals she's never experienced before, but feeding and grooming a pet doesn't make the owner kind. She stresses there's no real warmth behind their hospitality and definitely no genuine affection. She compares her to a maid cleaning a vase or filling it with water. She's simply maintaining the object in her care. Letitia listens, thinking to herself that she's the one holding the blade over her own neck. She explains she's just trying to stay on their good side because she wants to survive as long as possible at the mercy of the people deciding her fate. The nanny interrupts her, saying she's wrong. She reminds her of the terms of their agreement. Her job isn't to win them over, but to stay alert and never let them grow attached to her. She warns her that in the end, she's just a substitute for the real prince. And if they get suspicious and find out she's a girl, they'll force the imperial family to answer questions they should never have to face, meaning she would have breached her end of the contract. So why would the crown keep its promise to her then? Letitia tells her she knows exactly what she's worried about, her fear that her precious prince will never return once this act is over. She adds that she's worried she might stay here forever, or make a single mistake and drag her down with her when Basilenti knights come to take their heads. Letitia understands her desperation, as replacing a royal hostage twice would be a political disaster, even for the Great Harda Empire. And that's the truth unless they want another border war. She admits part of her knows exactly how His Majesty would react. He has 6 heirs, so what difference does losing one make? But she adds that a nanny's heart doesn't work that way. Everyone has someone they can never treat as disposable. She tells her she understands this feeling, asking her never to doubt her resolve again. She will die here as a prince of Harda. She stresses she won't beg for her life, and she will never run away. A theatrical scene plays where a man begs a woman named Harriet not to leave him. She tells him they have to end things here, as they both knew their story would end like this. The man wonders why, so she tells him the past week meant nothing to her, and a dream is only beautiful until you wake up. The moment they try to make it reality, their lives will turn into a nightmare. Backstage chaos unfolds as everyone calls for costumes and props for the farewell scene. Someone asks about the kid, and another answers. She was touching up Letty's makeup a minute ago. Then someone calls her to get on stage. Someone calls her by her name, Letitia Borba, asking why she's spacing out and reminding her she needs to be on stage. He orders her to move it and get up there, leaving her flustered. She realizes she's in trouble since she has absolutely no idea what her role is. She wonders what her first line is, or if she even has any dialogue at all. A voice from the stage calls out, wondering what's wrong with her today and urging her to hurry up, saying she already knows the role she's playing. He tells her, "You're playing the arsonist." She finds herself surrounded by flames, as a demonic voice wonders why her clothes aren't burning and why she's the only one untouched by the fire. She hears a woman's screams agonizing from the heat, feeling like she's being burned alive and can't breathe. She screams for help, feeling suffocated. She gasps for air, waking up from the nightmare, but she feels it was all too real, and her ribs still ache. She finds the dog Tan sleeping right on her chest. She realizes she was about to be crushed to death, pushing him with all her might, but he won't budge, barely managing to slide out from under him. She wonders if she forgot to lock the door last night, and how he even managed to get in. She decides she absolutely needs to check the lock every single night from now on, having thought it was just a weird one-time incident. But the next night, and the night after that, no matter how many locks she secured the door with, Tan somehow managed to get into her bedroom every single night. She wonders why he insists on sneaking in here, since she doesn't feed him or rub his belly. Every morning, he disappears before she wakes up, and if it weren't for the fur left all over her bed, she'd think she imagined the whole thing. One day, the nanny tells her breakfast is ready: bacon and cheese soup with grilled lamb chops. Letitia thanks her for the meal. She asks her to leave, saying she prefers to eat alone. The nanny agrees, takes her leave, and exits the room. Letitia feels awkward about the ongoing tension between them. She decides she just has to endure it. Suddenly, the maid Aina rushes in, screaming at her to stop eating. Letitia is startled by her sudden appearance. Aina apologizes for barging in, but says she couldn't stay quiet any longer. She tells her that her nanny poisoned that food. She had put poison in the dish she was just about to eat. Aina explains that for the past few days, she couldn't shake the feeling that the nanny was acting weird. Normally, Aina handles everything in the kitchen, but the nanny suddenly insisted on doing it all herself, and since she was so determined, Aina didn't feel it was her place to refuse. So she stepped aside and let her take over. But earlier that day, one of the palace maids told her a batch of spoiled ingredients was accidentally delivered to their kitchen, so she went to throw it out before it reached her table. And there, she caught the nanny putting something into her food. Letitia reflects on her own naivety, knowing they were never going to be friends. But she really thought they understood each other since both were trapped in this nightmare because someone they loved was held hostage. She figured her desperation to survive would make her cooperate no matter how much she hated her. But she was wrong. Her patience had reached its limit, and she couldn't stand this act for another day. In the end, she didn't care how she died. She realizes the treaty only required her death as a hostage, not necessarily drowning in a grand ritual. And for a woman desperate to return to the real prince, cutting a death row prisoner's life short by a few days was the most practical choice. She admits to herself that it might have been the most practical choice for her too. Letitia goes to meet the Duke's assistant, who apologizes for keeping her waiting. He asks about the favor she requested, and she answers yes. She reflects on how she seriously considered ignoring Aina's warning and eating the poisoned meal anyway. Instead of being dragged around like a pawn, clinging to life in constant fear of her identity being exposed, maybe letting her nanny end it would have been the kindest outcome for both of them. But instead, she asks the assistant to send her nanny back to the Empire because she refuses to die like this. He asks why, and she replies that she refuses to die a meaningless death. She claims the nanny was deeply homesick and that she felt sorry for her, and that if her fate was already sealed, then she will decide for herself what she dies for. At night, she sleeps in her room. She hears a knock on the door, wondering what's knocking at this hour. She fears her nanny might have come back. She's surprised to see Chamuka carrying Tan on his shoulder. Chamuka sarcastically wonders if this is where the other one was running off to every morning. Then Letitia asks if he's the one unlocking her door every night, to which he indifferently replies that nobody cares, telling her to just go back to sleep. He sarcastically asks if she thinks he came to kill her, and she denies it. She suggests that if Tan keeps wandering off, it'd be easier to just keep him leashed. She offers that if he tells her where he wants him taken, she'll bring him straight to him next time. Chamuka asks Letitia why she didn't question why Tan the dog was kept unleashed, and she simply answers that she assumes he has a good reason for it. He's amazed by how quickly she gets it. A strange sense of déjà vu hits her as she remembers Mr. Borba praising her sharp wit. He orders her to bring the dog to the central suite on the 3rd floor next time. Then he tells her he'll take him back himself tonight and tells her to go to bed. So she agrees, wishing him a safe trip back. She thinks to herself that this day was exhausting from start to finish. Before leaving, he asks about her request to meet his father, questioning if the nanny did something. She explains that the nanny was homesick and having a hard time adjusting, so it's best for her to go back to her family. He tells her that from now on, she'll be having all her meals with them. He asks if this bothers her, and she says no, figuring his father will be happy about it since he's obsessed with her safety. He repeats his request for her to go to sleep, saying he'll see her at breakfast in the morning, making her think to herself that he's an incredibly selfish guy. The next morning at breakfast, Letitia thanks Grand Duke Ferric for the invitation. He tells her there's no need to thank him. As the one responsible for her safety, it's only natural to keep her close. She recalls her last meal where she got kidnapped by Chamuka's grandfather, but today she feels ready for anything. He asks for a full explanation regarding her request to send the nanny away. She feels like she's been dodging this question since yesterday. She repeats what she told Chamuka, that she was deeply homesick and hadn't adjusted well, asking if there's an issue with that. He answers no, explaining he just wanted to understand her reasons. He admits that no matter how attentive his staff is, they can never replace the woman who raised her, so she thanks him for his concern and reassures him she'll be fine. He surprises her by saying he's already arranged a carriage to send the nanny back to the Empire, leaving her shocked by how fast he acted. He reassures her that her request has been carried out exactly as she wished, and there's no need to worry anymore. He orders her to finish her meal now that they've talked enough, and she agrees. She wonders what his words, "no need to worry anymore," really mean. Meanwhile, the nanny is forced into a carriage, as she screams, wondering how they dare treat a noble lady like a criminal. The guard calmly tells her to pipe down, informing her she's heading back to the Empire today. She protests, wondering how she can leave and abandon the prince, since she's his royal nanny and it's her duty to stay by his side. Earlier, the assistant informs the Grand Duke that they found poison in the prince's food. Ferric confirms the news, so the assistant explains that on his orders, he secretly intercepted and tested the meal. The dose was too weak to be detected by silverware, but it would have been fatal to a child or someone with a weak build. He goes on, revealing there's another issue concerning the prince. He states he has every reason to believe the nanny was abusing him. He explains that his physical growth is way behind a normal 8-year-old. When he arrived, he was severely underweight, with chapped lips and incredibly rough skin. In other words, he was suffering from acute malnutrition, probably because he's a neglected, illegitimate child, denied proper care. Ferric asserts that adding poison to his already frail state is an unforgivable crime. He points out that this boy is now the official property of House Basilenti, acquired under a secret treaty between the crown and his family. He adds that the only reason he allowed those imperial parasites to tag along was to make his transition as smooth as possible, not for them to mess with his property. The assistant asks how to get rid of her, so he orders him to handle her the Basilenti way. In the present, the guards outside discuss the plan, where a carriage bearing the imperial crest will be sent out completely unguarded. One bets it won't last more than 5 days, while another thinks she might survive that long. The assistant bets she won't last more than 3 days, making the guards laugh at his ruthlessness. One comments that the Empire loves to call them savage barbarians, so they might as well live up to the reputation, and they all bet on 3 days. At the dining table, Letitia keeps mulling over the Duke's words, wondering if her suspicions are too obvious. She notices the maid Aina approaching her and thinks she doesn't need any more complications. Aina reassures her that she'll dedicate everything to serving her. Letitia decides to ask her something. She tells her she won't be needing her services anymore. She adds that she'll ask her a few questions, and her answers will determine her fate, either heading back to the Empire like the nanny or... Aina panics, wondering why she's saying this all of a sudden. Letitia reveals she already knows Aina is an imperial spy, and that she also knows who she truly is. Aina denies everything, swearing on her life she wasn't lying about the nanny, and offers Letitia to inspect the kitchen if she doesn't believe her. Letitia asks how she knew right away that the powder the nanny added was poison just by looking at it, and wonders why she'd even suspect the woman who raised her. Aina explains that at first she thought it was medicine or a supplement, but a bad feeling drove her to investigate. Letitia confronts her with a contradiction, noting she previously claimed she walked into the kitchen by pure accident, asking why she was monitoring the nanny in the first place, and if it was part of her mission. Aina denies it, claiming she was just keeping track of her meal schedule. Letitia tells her to save her excuses. She tells her she'll buy whatever she says, whether it's about tracking the nanny or recognizing the poison instantly. But she clarifies that the nanny isn't the real reason she doubts her. She grabs her chin and wipes the freckles off her face, revealing they're just paint. Aina gives up and stops pretending. She admits it's practically impossible to trick a professional actress. She asks if His Majesty told her about her past too, wondering in surprise if she really doesn't remember her. She reveals she used to deliver flower arrangements to her dressing room all the time. She adds that the noble lady she previously served was completely obsessed with her, and she was a total fan when she got assigned to serve her. Letitia cuts her off and orders her to drop the act and start talking, accusing her of being an imperial spy sent to watch her. Aina confesses that's only half the truth. The crown did send her, but her mission wasn't Letitia. It was to monitor the nanny in case something like this happened. Letitia asks if she was secretly the nanny's boss, but Aina strongly denies it, explaining she's just a low-ranking informant assigned to watch another informant. She adds that if the nanny hadn't lost her mind, she would have kept quiet and gone home peacefully, sarcastically asking if she looks like some trusted elite agent on top secret missions when she's barely 16 years old. Letitia thinks to herself that Aina is spilling everything suspiciously easy, making her hard to believe. Aina grabs her hands enthusiastically, explaining that the reason for her honesty is that they're both in the same boat now. She swears she has no intention of ever hurting her. All she wants is to stay alive and survive this mess. She adds that Letitia will be in big trouble if she leaves too, because if both she and the nanny suddenly return, the imperial family will view Letitia as a security risk since no one's watching her, and Aina herself will face trouble for blowing her cover. She warns her that if the crown goes too long without confirmation of her death, they might send someone else. And this new agent might not be just a regular maid. They could infiltrate the Grand Duchy disguised as a Basilenti guard. Unlike her, this agent would be a ruthless, professional killer, explaining that if the Emperor sends a professional shadow, whose identity and mission are unknown, she'll face a much bigger problem than poisoned soup. She begs Letitia to let her stay by her side. Letitia asks how can she trust that she won't suddenly turn back to her former employer like the nanny did, and Aina cheerfully replies there's no need to worry about that. She explains that her previous lady was a frail young woman from a distant branch of the royal family, and when she died, she had nowhere to go, so the crown took her in. She stresses she truly has nowhere to return to, and has only been working as a spy for 3 months. She adds nervously that her handler hasn't even contacted her since they crossed the border, and her lack of experience got her exposed almost instantly, so Letitia finally agrees. She tells her she can stay as her personal maid and asks her to let go of her hand now. Overjoyed, Aina cries tears of joy. Letitia makes a key point, stating she has an expiration date, so she doesn't need anyone's protection. Aina objects, saying she can't know that for sure since the Duke treats her so well, even getting rid of the nanny to protect her. But Letitia thinks to herself that he's just fattening her up before the slaughter. She sighs, so Aina asks if she regrets her decision. She answers no, explaining she can't stop thinking about what the Grand Duke said at breakfast. While Letitia ponders the Duke's words, she hopes the nanny made it home safely. Aina thinks the nanny deserves a scolding for ignoring orders and acting on her own. She reassures Letitia there's no need to worry, as the nanny is still a noble lady and won't be executed or tortured. Despite parting on bad terms, Letitia hopes she returns safely, as a flashback shows her tied up in a carriage. 2 days later, she asks the Duke's assistant about the royal nanny, and he tells her carriage left 2 days ago. The assistant adds that the nanny seemed sad to leave but wasn't entirely against going home, and the Duke gave her a generous travel allowance, so there's no need to worry. She decides to believe she made it back safely, since the Duke always keeps his word. While walking, she runs into Chamuka and greets him. He asks why she didn't come, reminding her that he told her exactly which suite she should bring Tan to. She gets confused, as she didn't understand what he meant by the suite. She recalls recently realizing that Tan can't get into her room once she bolts the door shut. Since then, she assumed he lost interest in sneaking into her room and she didn't have to return him at night. He just says, "I see." So she asks what he was actually trying to ask. She asks if he was expecting her to come. He reveals to her that every night Tan slept outside her door and he was the one taking him back to the tower, so he knew she had no reason to bring him to his suite. He answers that he wasn't expecting her, so she asks why he questioned her about not coming then. He simply replies, "I don't know," and leaves. In her room, she wonders what that meant. She ponders whether that was his clumsy way of inviting her over. She concludes that these people are hopeless when it comes to normal conversations, remembering how Gayan used to order her to eat and drink. That night, Chamuka hears a knock on his room door, and when he opens the door, he's surprised to find Letitia standing in front of him. He lets her in, explaining he was just about to go fetch Tan himself. She tells him she brought him tonight and asks if he'd prefer she didn't do it again. He tells her to do as she sees fit, making her believe coming to his room wasn't a mistake. As silence fills the room, she gets ready to leave. He stops her and asks her to wait when she tries to leave due to how awkward the situation is. He asks her to stay until Tan calms down and falls asleep. He tells her he doesn't sleep here and asks her to follow him while he carries the sleeping dog. He leads her to what looks like a wardrobe closet. He puts Tan in a wooden cabinet and tells her she can wish him goodnight. She wishes Tan a good night's sleep, but wonders in confusion why he puts him in a closet instead of a bed. She had assumed a beloved pet like him would have his own luxurious room in this vast castle. She deduces that he's intentionally hiding Tan. Suddenly, a loud creaking sound is heard, and she frantically asks where it's coming from. He quickly covers her mouth and shuffles her out of sight. He whispers to her to keep her voice down and not make any noise. Grand Duke Ferric's voice calls out from outside, calling for Chamuka. He walks in and harshly reprimands his son, saying Tan should never leave the tower. Letitia is terrified by his presence. Chamuka argues that taking him outside for some fresh air isn't a crime, and that his father himself allowed him to roam the grounds before. Ferric counters that those were special circumstances, and only the vessel is allowed to leave while the real body remains sealed. He announces he's taking Tan back. Chamuka screams, telling him to stop and warning him not to dare touch him. Ferric tells him the matter is non-negotiable. She feels confused. She thought he came for the dog, wondering why he's moving the wardrobe. She discovers in horror that there was an actual coffin hidden beneath the floorboards. Ferric takes the coffin and announces his departure. Chamuka desperately screams that Tan has already been dead for a long time. He angrily asks why it even matters if the coffin stays in the tower or in his room. Ferric leaves without saying a single word. Letitia asks him what the Grand Duke just took. He tells her he took Tan, explaining that the dog she sees is just a vessel. He reveals that Tan was originally a human boy. He adds that he died a long time ago, so she suggests he chase after his father. He asks what the point is since the Duke just took his brother. That night, she can't sleep. Her mind keeps running over the dark family secret she just uncovered. She remembers the look of sorrow in Chamuka's eyes, and how she almost asked if he was holding back tears. But she remembers his previous warning that everything in the fortress, including her, belongs to his father, and that she shouldn't meddle in business that doesn't concern her. Sighing as she acknowledges the warning, she thinks about the cruel story she heard, about the beloved Basilenti family dog that wasn't originally a dog, but the young master of the palace whose body died years ago. It was a story so absurd she would have laughed at it under any other circumstance. But considering who told her, she had no choice but to believe it. Yet questions still linger in her mind. Why was Tan's soul put inside a dog? And why hide his coffin instead of giving him a proper funeral? She wonders about Chamuka's feelings as he roams the duchy with Tan by his side. Knowing his little brother is already gone, she recalls his warning, don't overstep your bounds. While bathing, she looks miserable, so Aina asks what she's thinking about. Letitia wonders why she's even here after telling her she doesn't need her help, and Aina cheerfully replies she's her personal maid and responsible for her care. Letitia tells her she didn't give her this position to actually be waited on, but Aina tells her to stop squirming and let her wash her hair, so she gives in. Aina asks Letitia what surprised her most when she first saw her. She explains she genuinely thought her hair was naturally curly, but it's completely straight even underwater. Letitia asks why she thought that. She answers that it's because of her role as the little angel in the play The Trials of Rachacha, where she had cute curls. Letitia confirms she styled her hair that way on purpose to fit the angel image, so Aina tells her that made her realize something way more important. She asks what she means, and Aina tells her not to be humble, saying she has an incredibly beautiful face. She coldly fires back that good looks are a basic requirement in her profession as an actress. Aina is surprised, having thought she'd be modest and deny it, so Letitia asks if she wants her to go back to acting shy, making her quickly back down. Aina explains what she meant was, it's only natural for the Duke and the young master to admire her for her beauty. Letitia cuts her off and tells her not to call him that, explaining he hates the title, young master. Aina asks why, so Letitia guesses the title makes him look like an only child, when in reality there are 2 young masters in the Basilenti house, and calling him that completely erases Tan's existence. She says she doesn't really know the reason, just asking her not to use that title, so Aina suggests she ask him why next time. Letitia finds it odd, saying if she's asked not to do something, she simply won't do it. But Aina insists there's no harm in asking if she's curious. Besides, since you'll be living in the Grand Duchy from now on, I think you've earned the right to do what you want from time to time. Suddenly, Letitia dunks her face into the bathtub, throwing Aina into a panic as she screams for help and cold water. She angrily asks why she put her face in the boiling water, and Letitia answers, "You're right." Aina gets confused and asks if she agrees that the water is too hot, but she denies it. She clarifies she means she's right about earning the right to do what she wants once in a while. Later, Letitia goes to Chamuka's room and announces herself. He coldly tells her he has nothing to say and orders her to leave, but she insists she needs to speak with him about what happened last night. She emphasizes she has a lot to say and believes he needs to get the coffin back. He reminds her of his previous warning not to overstep her bounds. He tells her she's a political prisoner with no right to interfere in House Basilenti affairs, ordering her back to her room. She asks why he just stood by while his father took the coffin yesterday. He repeats that everything inside the castle belongs to his father. She insists that he wanted to stop him. She says he wanted to mourn Tan, protect his memory, and keep him close, wondering if just wanting it isn't enough. He orders her to stop talking like a sentimental fool, questioning why the coffin even matters. He states his family doesn't act on emotion, so she challenges him by asking why Tan's coffin was hidden in his dressing room if that were true. She reminds him he knew he couldn't take it out of the tower, yet he hid it anyway, proving how desperate he was to keep it. She explains she stayed silent yesterday because it wasn't her business to interfere, but it's clear he didn't want his father to take it. She notices he's hurting, and if being a Basilenti ties his hands while his pride stops him from showing his true feelings, then she will be the one to push him forward, and she'll be his excuse. Chamuka explains that his father refuses to accept the death of Tan, who was on the verge of dying since birth. Because of that, before his mother collapsed, she forced his soul into the body of a hound. This spell allowed him to stay in the castle, but with his original body soulless, he wonders if he can truly be considered alive. He's a dog now, acting and eating just like one, and can never return to his human body. Practically, he's already dead, but his father refuses to face reality and keeps the coffin locked in the tower next to their unconscious mother. So Letitia asks if he wants to give him a proper burial. He suggests they go get the coffin together, but asks for one good reason why he should move. She replies with a smile that if he doesn't listen to her now, she'll kill herself right on the spot. He asks what will happen when his father finds out what they did. She answers that the worst he could do is execute her, and he can't execute her twice. They map out a plan for Operation Retrieve Tan's coffin. Phase 1 is hiding Letitia under a thick cloak. Phase 2 is walking confidently toward the tower guards and telling them Chamuka is returning Tan to his room, relying on them to let him pass without a second thought. Phase 3 is retrieving the coffin. He doubts the plan will succeed, but she insists it has to work. He reminds her that pretending to be Tan to bypass the guards was her idea. He explains his father banned him from the tower after yesterday, so this is the only way. Tan is the only one allowed through because he was ordered to stay inside, and only a few people know the coffin is the real Tan. He gives the cloak to her, explaining that as long as she looks like a dog under it, the guards won't suspect a thing. He tells her to spread her arms and legs to look bigger. They approach the tower, and the guards greet Chamuka. He asks where his father is, and the guard tells him he's currently inside the tower. He tries to enter, but they block him, reminding him of the Duke's strict orders not to enter. So he claims he's just returning Tan and leaving right away. The guards refuse and tell him they can't let him pass, offering to take the dog inside themselves. He whispers that Tan is fast asleep, asking if they're going to carry him upstairs themselves. He reminds them of the Duke's absolute orders: never enter the tower, and never let Tan wander outside unsupervised. He points out that he doubts stopping him is worth disobeying their core order. The guards hesitate and let him in, begging him not to stay long and not to tell the Duke they allowed him in. He assures them of that after entering, then pulls the cloak off her. She's amazed the plan actually worked, but she suddenly stops, realizing she's been in this tower before when the Duke brought her here. He scolds her for being too observant, reminding her he told her to keep her eyes closed. She apologizes, claiming the layout looked familiar, so he tells her there's no point in hiding it now that she's already inside. He orders her to stay close to him, and she immediately agrees. He leads her to a room, explaining that Tan's coffin is kept inside. He adds that his father must be upstairs with his mother, and they won't run into him as long as they keep quiet. He comments on her terrible stamina. She complains that they ran all the way to the top of the tower without stopping, so it's only natural for her to gasp. He tells her to catch her breath, as they need to take the coffin and leave immediately. She enters the room and is amazed by its contents, wondering if it's an alchemist's lab or workshop. She wonders if this place originally belonged to Lady Astrid. Suddenly, he notices the coffin is gone. It was supposed to be right there, but it's missing. He wonders if they moved it somewhere outside the tower, but if they were going to move it anyway, why take it from his room in the first place? She wonders about the reason and destination of its relocation. They notice a glowing magic circle on the floor. Elsewhere, Grand Duke Ferric appears holding a lantern. He recalls a memory of Astrid promising him she'll return tomorrow. He wakes up from his daydream to the sound of magical energy, realizing that the tower is collapsing. Letitia flashes back to a massive fire. Members of her theater troupe try to escape the burning building. She refuses to leave, preferring to burn to death with them. A woman calls out her name, Letitia. A man urges her to hurry up and leave. The escape tunnel collapses, but it's not completely blocked yet. He tells her she's the only one who can squeeze through the small gap. She expresses her fear that the path isn't safe. Her troupe reassures her they'll be fine and will catch up with her. They urge her to get out and not look back. They tell her to find help before the ceiling completely caves in. Once she gets out, they reassure her that they'll all survive as soon as the rescue team puts out the fire. She realizes they're lying to her. The entire building has been swallowed by flames. The fire is out of control, and she has to keep moving. Total darkness surrounds her in the tunnel. Her vision begins to fade due to lack of oxygen and exhaustion. Her eyes slowly close. A voice wakes her up. It was Chamuka's voice calling her. She wakes up to find herself in a strange place. He tells her the tower collapsed on top of them and they're buried under the rubble. She asks how badly hurt he is, and he tells her his arm hurts a bit, but he's fine, making her conclude they were incredibly lucky. He sarcastically asks if a head injury is causing her ridiculous optimism, but she denies it, explaining it's a miracle they're alive after falling from that height. He agrees and points to some wooden planks, telling her he can feel air coming from behind them. After moving the wooden planks, Chamuka warns Letitia about causing another collapse. They discover a tunnel, and she thinks if they crawl through it, they might just survive. But she notices his leg is bleeding heavily, and he tells her he can't move. She asks how long he's been bleeding like this, and he answers since he woke up, guessing he must have fallen on something sharp when the tower collapsed. She tries to help him, but he tells her he's lost too much blood and can't stand. He insists on staying, warning that the structure is unstable and trying to drag him through the tunnel will just end up burying them both. He tells her only option is to escape and get a rescue team. Outside, panic spreads among the Grand Duke's men since Ferric is still trapped inside the collapsed tower. The assistant orders all the mages and knights stationed at the castle to make rescuing the Grand Duke their top priority. Suddenly, Ferric emerges from the rubble, carrying an unconscious Duchess Astrid. He orders them to bring a doctor immediately to check on the Duchess. The assistant anxiously points out that the commander's injuries are way worse than hers. He brushes it off, calling his injuries just a scratch, even though the tower literally just collapsed on him. The vice commander arrives, expressing relief that he survived, so Ferric asks him about the situation. He informs him that the guards at the entrance reported something super unusual. Young Master Chamuka was inside the tower. Ferric is shocked since he explicitly banned him from entering. The guards drop to their knees begging for forgiveness, explaining that Chamuka insisted on bringing Lord Tan back inside. They add they hesitated because Tan seemed fast asleep, but at the time they thought it was the safest call. Furious, Ferric strikes one of the guards with his sword. Looking at the other terrified guard, he tells him he's having a hard time understanding what he's saying. He orders him to start from the beginning. Ferric processes this. The issue isn't just that they disobeyed his direct order and let him in, but that Tan hadn't left the tower even once since yesterday. He wonders, then why was Chamuka carrying him? And the terrified guard swears he was absolutely sure it was Lord Tan, explaining that the person was completely covered in a thick blanket, but the way he carried them was just like usual. And more importantly, that unmistakable presence couldn't have been a stuffed doll. It belonged to the prince. The assistant realizes he was trying to figure out who could possibly disguise themselves as him, but there's no adult in the castle that small. He apologizes, admitting he might be jumping to conclusions and that Chamuka couldn't have pulled something like this off without help, but Ferric cuts him off saying, no. Meanwhile, an explosion goes off in the rubble. Horrified, Chamuka asks Letitia what she's doing, and she replies that she's starting a fire. He accuses her of being crazy and trying to burn them alive before the tower completely caves in. She tells him to stop freaking out and crawl through the tunnel. She asks if he hates her, since she's the one who dragged him into this mess. He denies it, admitting this happened because he acted without thinking and regrets everything. While apologizing, she tells him she promised never to leave anyone behind, and that includes him, so she's going to get him out of here. Then she heads toward the fire, as he screams for her to stop and come back. Letitia thinks that only when death is right around the corner can you truly see what's in people's hearts. Desperation, fear, and beneath it all, a love deeper than anything else. She prays to God to grant her just one miracle, the strength of her brothers and sisters, the resolve of her family who chose to burn so she could live, and the courage to move forward without a second thought. She remembers a stone in her chest that causes her sharp pain every now and then. This feeling started after she met Astrid and learned she's a mage just like her. She recalls Astrid's words that a violent clash with an opposing element can awaken her magical powers, and that fire won't kill her because she has a water affinity. But the truth is, she's absolutely terrified of dying. And what's even scarier than death is surviving to be the only one left. Spending the rest of her life as an empty shell, choking on the smell of ash. Dragging herself through the rubble scares her way more than burning to death. She thinks if a miracle happens and she survives this sea of flames, just how much would she hate herself? Suddenly, rain starts pouring outside, shocking Ferric and his men. It's a total miracle in this wasteland. Hilda screams, telling everyone to look up. Ferric orders everyone except the commander to line up behind her. Hilda senses a massive presence nearby, something that makes every nerve in her body scream. She realizes that Mana is naturally drawn to a power much greater than itself, but this feeling is completely new. It makes every single hair on her body stand up. It demands her recognition and won't let her look away. She wonders if this massive, monstrous mana core could truly belong to a human. Meanwhile, Letitia is floating in the air, feeling the pain and burning. This is what it feels like to be burned alive. She can no longer feel her right hand, wondering if the fire burned it away. She feels guilty about Chamuka because he begged her not to do it, hoping he made it out safely. She apologizes, admitting she really thought sacrificing herself would save him, never imagining it would end like this. She apologizes for acting like she had it all planned out, when in reality she had absolutely no clue what she was doing. Suddenly, she hears a voice asking how long she plans on sleeping. She wakes up to find herself in a bed with him right beside her. She wonders how she's even still alive. Hilda gives her a cup of water to drink. She officially congratulates her on awakening her power. Letitia asks in confusion, "Did I survive?" Hilda confirms it, explaining that since she just awakened her mana, she'll probably feel some discomfort. She reassures her that this is a natural process as her body restructures to adapt to the mana. Letitia apologizes to Hilda, admitting she was the one who suggested entering the tower. She explains that after hearing Lord Tan's story, she felt she couldn't just leave things as they were, so she overstepped her bounds and suggested bringing the coffin. She adds that Lord Chamuka was hesitant to do it, and it was all because of her. She wonders to herself why she didn't do it back then, and why she couldn't go back. She wonders if it was because she wasn't desperate enough to awaken, lacked willpower, or because she had never faced a life or death crisis before. She believes she could have done it, that she could have saved everyone. She says that since she put him in danger, she should receive whatever punishment comes. But Hilda looks confused. She explains that they managed to save him thanks to her, and the rain she brought quickly put out the fire. As for his injuries, he's fine and will fully recover without any lasting side effects. Letitia feels guilty, thinking that if it weren't for her, he wouldn't have been hurt in the first place. Hilda clarifies to Letitia that she wasn't the one who brought the first young master here, pointing out that despite the doctor's orders for absolute rest, he forced himself out of his room and came down looking for her despite his leg injury. When she asked why, she replied that only the young master knows, but he checked on her every day and stayed by her side. He admitted his mistake, confirming he was the one who suggested sneaking into the Western Tower to steal Tan's coffin, and that he recklessly led her, which resulted in this incident. Then his father asked him if he knew Letitia was a mage. He answered that he didn't know and that she walked straight into the fire to save him because of his injuries and the explosion. The mall and the guard were shocked to hear this, and the headmaid agreed that forcing a magic awakening through an opposing element is a brutal method, meaning Letitia felt the full agony of burning, so his father told him to rest until his body fully recovered. The headmaid realized that the young master took the blame upon himself to hide the real story from the Duke, deciding to pretend she never heard her version. The maid tells Letitia that the young master doesn't blame her, and if it weren't for her decision at that moment, he wouldn't even be here now, assuring her that she's the one who saved him and telling her not to blame herself. Letitia notices that the young master is holding her hand so tightly it went numb, wondering why since he can't even move due to his injury in the first place. She keeps staring at him while he sleeps, then asks the maid Hilda how they were rescued that day. She replies that by the time she arrived with the knights, Letitia had already cleared a path, coming out of a large hole with him. The moment they saw the knights and yelled for him to get medical attention, she immediately passed out. She recalls seeing Hilda back then and being unable to ask for help. Hilda explains that mana is naturally attracted to stronger mana, and this affects mages too. Because of this, she used to think she had an unrequited love for the Grand Duchess, which led the Grand Duke to bury her in a potato field when she had just awakened her magic. She adds that this attraction is what helped her find her, making Letitia realize that her initial admiration for her was just a magical effect, and nothing more. Hilda mentions that Lord Tan was looking for her every night, making her puzzled about Tan's identity. She explains that Tan has a strong mana path and senses, which draws him to the protagonist Letitia and makes him want to play with her. She wonders what happened to Tan and the coffin that was in the tower. Hilda reassures her that the coffin is protected by several layers of magic and wasn't destroyed, but notes there's a small issue regarding Tan. She inquires about the nature of the problem since the coffin is perfectly fine, only to be interrupted by the appearance of a boy acting like a dog and barking, giving her a massive shock. She notices his silver hair and blue eyes, realizing that this is Lord Tan in his human form. She backs away in fear as Tan approaches, trying to introduce herself officially to calm him down, but he pounces on her. Hilda explains that since Tan lived as a dog, he acts like a dog in his human form, and his behavior intensified due to the mana attraction, making the protagonist Letitia scream for help. The young master steps in, telling Tan to step away from the patient, holding him tightly and scolding him for bothering her while she's sick. Tan keeps barking while the young master tells him he's the one in the wrong and needs to stop playing the victim. He grumbles that he doesn't talk or listen well, and the fight heats up with loud barking and shouting. The protagonist Letitia warns the young master that his violent movements might reopen his wounds, but he refuses to stop, so she insists he shouldn't overexert himself. The young master angrily fires back that she's the one who overexerted herself with her reckless stunt in the tower, warning her never to do it again, while she argues that her action is what saved them both, all amidst Tan's ongoing chaos. She asks the young master not to be too harsh on Tan, making him wonder whose side she's even on. Suddenly, everyone falls silent at the presence of the Grand Duke, who criticizes the chaos and noise around a patient who can't even get up, ordering both Tan and the young master back to their rooms. The young master is surprised by his father's decision, and the scene shifts to the Grand Duke's quarters at the highest point of the castle, where there's a secret room where Duchess Astrid rests. Letitia feels a complete absence of any trace of life in her. Hilda comments that the Duke brought her here and didn't let her rest enough, so the Duke responds that this place is more comfortable, though Letitia secretly thinks her peace of mind will be completely non-existent. The Duke asks Letitia if she feels uncomfortable, and she quickly denies it. The Duke tells Hilda that she says she's fine, while Letitia keeps her internal annoyance to herself. Letitia touches Astrid's cold hand. Then the Duke orders her not to let go, stating that from now on, her job is to hold the Grand Duchess's hand at specific times. She agrees but asks what the point of this is. The Duke confirms that her magic awakened due to the incident, explaining that newly awakened mana is unstable and uncontrollable until the witch adapts to it, meaning her mana will flow into Astrid through touch against her will. She wonders to herself if mana is flowing right now because she doesn't feel anything at all. The Duke concludes his speech, asserting that she will revive Astrid using her magic.